Hey everybody, welcome to another happy episode of my Partridge Family collection. How are you doing? I hope you're doing great. I hope you're doing some self-care these days in the world that we live in. It's crazy. And so, I mean, that's what, what I remember telling my mom when I was a kid. My mom would always tell me or ask me, why do you got to collect so much of this junk? Why don't you get rid of some of this stuff? My family today even says that to me, what do you got to collect all this junk for? Sell it on eBay. And I tell them exactly what I told my mom back in the day when I was a kid. It was like, it makes me happy. Like, come on, get happy, right? The Partridge Family had it right. It's an action. It's a verb. Get happy. And I think that that's what we have to do sometimes, right? I mean, I remember just having to be like, when I have a bad day, I just open up my trading card binder, flip through the pages, and all of a sudden I just feel better. I look at my stamp collection, just feel instantly better. And I think that's important, especially today. And it's why not, right? We got to make ourselves happy. And you don't even need a collection, right? It could be something else. It could be surrounding yourself with the people that you love, or a piece of music, or TV show, or movie, or just to have things around us that make us happy. I think there's nothing wrong with that, right? Gets us out of the conundrum of the times. And for the past couple of weeks, I've actually been going back and doing something that's kind of made me happy, and even though it's been kind of a rough road here and there. And that is I've been rewatching the ever forgettable, often forgettable, but part of this Partridge Family lore, right? It's part of the Partridge Family 2200 AD cartoons. I've gone back and watched all 16 episodes. Sometimes it was rough. There were a couple episodes that made me laugh. And it's interesting. I thought, this episode, why not take a deep dive into this Hanna-Barbera creation? And there's some interesting stories behind it. And we'll go through some trivia and some background information. And then also I'll maybe drop in a couple of clips here and there, try to do it without getting dinged by YouTube. Sometimes I think, wow, YouTube's going to ding me on this. And then they don't. And then there's other things that I think, oh, this is perfectly fine. And then all of a sudden I get, taken down. So I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet, but I'll try to do like some little brief clips of the cartoon. If it's been a while since you've seen it like me. I mean, I've probably seen a few, like I think when the when the VHS tapes came out, I rewatched some of them, but I haven't really gone back and rewatched, I'm getting a glare here, rewatched all the episodes. Some of them are pretty not great. I don't know if that's a term. Uh, Trying to be positive, right? Some of them are good. Some of them made me laugh. So interesting stuff. And then of course we'll go to the overhead and look at some of the different things I have in my collection that have to do with Partridge Family 2200 AD. I've got a few items, not a lot, because like I say, it's kind of forgettable as we go through the Partridge Family. I have so many other things in my collection, but I'm like, you know what? Let's do it. And this is actually a sealed copy, but I was watching, I have a couple of loose DVDs that I was watching on. They're not around on YouTube. I think if you go through YouTube, there may be like 2 or 3 channels that are showing the complete cartoon, but it's tough. And so this played on Saturday mornings, right? We loved the Saturday mornings in the 70s, right? It's still considered kind of the golden age of Saturday morning cartoons. And I want to tell you, in 1974, when this aired on September 7th of 1974, and it ran for half a season on CBS, when it aired, I was kind of in denial still that the Partridge Family was not coming back for the fall season. And I remember that summer because you were reading it in 16 and Tiger Beat that the show was canceled. It wasn't coming back, but I was still hoping all summer. I was like, the Partridge Family's coming back. And until I see that fall preview in TV Guide, remember you get the big fall preview in TV Guide? I don't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. I was in denial. And, I'm still like 11, maybe, 12. I mean, we were growing up, right? We grew up with the Partridge Family, a lot of us who were very young when it came out. And we grew up a lot, right? You grew up from 7 to 11 or 7 to, 12 or however old. Maybe you were a little older, a teenager, a preteen. But I still liked the Saturday morning cartoons. I still liked it. I was still into the Partridge Family. One of my friends have, grown up, gone on to other things, but I was still on the Partridge Family and David Cassidy. And so when I saw that fall preview come out and it was no Partridge Family, I was like, ugh. But at least I have the cartoon, right? That cartoon's coming out. And so that I knew Saturday morning I'd be getting up and watching the cartoon and with high hopes. And I can remember as a kid not really being too thrilled with it when I saw it because I was like, why does it look like the Jetsons? Like, why? Why is this looking like the Jetsons to me? There's a reason. I wasn't that dumb as a kid. Like I figured it out quick. I didn't find out the true story until later on. Well, actually, just to briefly go over it, Hanna-Barbera was in the process of creating a Jetsons sequel. They were going to remake the Jetsons. Elroy was going to be a teenager in a rock band, and Judy Jetson was an ace reporter on a newspaper, and so they were older. They did this with the Flintstones. Remember, Bam Bam and Pebbles, right? They were teenagers. They had a whole show on Saturday mornings as well. So they were going to do that. Seemed like a good idea for them because the Jetsons were popular. I mean, I think they ran for 1 or 2 seasons in the early 60s, didn't do great because that was the days when like the Flintstones and the Jetsons were on prime time. On Sunday night, you could watch them. And it wasn't until they put the Jetsons on Saturday mornings, which was like mid 60s, that they really took off and they got like a boost out of that. So they were thinking that Hanna-Barbera was great at that, right? Remaking popular things, right? And all the Jetsons was a remake of the Flintstones in space, right? So they were doing that. But then they had this Partridge Family story that they were going to do, a cartoon animated series, now they're called, right? And for some reason, the Jetsons got shelved. They thought, oh, we have all this stuff. Let's just make it the Partridge Family in space. And it ran for half a season, like I said. And then in 1977, I think it was a Fred Flintstone and Friends, like a syndication where they would just replay old cartoons. They renamed it Partridge Family in Outer Space. And if you go on like eBay and you're looking at Cels or things like that, a lot of times it'll say Partridge Family in Outer Space. That's just because they renamed it in 1977. It was the same 16 episodes, but they just renamed it. So the Jetsons sequel became the Partridge Family. And it was a shame, really. It really was a shame because I always felt, and I'll say this probably a million times during this episode, that the Partridge Family, first of all, didn't make sense to me. Like, why are they in outer space? They're all the same age. They were in set 1974 a minute ago, and now they're in 2200 AD, and they're all the same age. It just didn't make sense to me. Oh, and then, the other thing is I was so excited for, it was the fact that I just love these other band style cartoons, like the Jackson 5 and the Osmonds, and they played their own music. Oh, and also the Brady Kids. Remember, the Brady Kids were in a band too. They had their own cartoon. I think they came out a year before Partridge Family 2200 AD. But they played music, and we got all of the voiceovers of all the actors playing their characters, right? All the actors, and we recognized their voices because we listened to them all the time. The Brady Kids were produced by Filmation, I believe, that the same people who brought us Archie. And then Jackson 5 and Osmonds were very well done, but they were produced by Rankin Bass. And also, I think for the Jackson 5, Motown Productions as well. So they did it very well. And they had all the original voiceovers, all the original songs. And so that's kind of what I was hoping we were going to get with the Partridge Family. I always felt that it would have been much better, I think, if they would have made a remake of like Scooby-Doo, right? Had them like solving crimes. They were on tour. They could have gone from city to city and solving crimes, right? In their bus. Oh, and the bus could have been animated. I mean, just like the Mystery Machine, right? In Scooby-Doo. they could have animated that bus, because the bus, I mean, to me was just another character on the show. I mean, can you imagine it like taking the turns on two wheels, or like bouncing down the road, playing music? It would have been so great. So yeah, so that's where my mind goes when I watch these cartoons. It's like, if only they would have done, if they were going to copy themselves, why not copy Scooby-Doo and have the kids? And on top of it, another thing that we'll talk about and touch on is the Goober and the Ghost Chasers, which there's Partridge Family connection to this. And the Partridge Family cartoon could have been Goobers and the Ghost Chaser, which was a total ripoff of Scooby-Doo, another Hanna-Barbera ripoff of themselves. But they featured the Partridge Family kids. And we'll talk a little bit about that too, as we look at the Goober and the Ghost Chasers. I bet you don't remember this, right? 6 of the 16 episodes of this, talk about an ever forgettable cartoon, featured the Partridge Kids: Susan Day, Danny Bonaducci, Brian Forster, and Suzanne Krauf as Lori, Danny, Chris, and Tracy. And they were helping the Ghost Chasers solve crimes.
What's happened to them? What happened to who? What happened to Gilly and Goober? They're down there somewhere. Gilly, Goober,
Christopher, Tracy, Lori, Ted, Tina. That takes care of everyone.
This is what the Partridge Family cartoon should have been, but we got them in outer space. And we got this really hokey version of the bus there. I mean, it's not even colored the same. Drives me crazy. But anyway, so interesting information, right? Interesting stuff. And I'm gonna, like I said, drop in clips here and there. But I think that, why don't we just go to the overhead right now, and I'll show you some things, and we'll talk a little bit more about this cartoon. Let's do it.
Cities rising in the sky, freeway traffic jetting high. Future's here for us to see. It's 2200 AD. It's the Partridge Family, showing us how it's gonna be. The Partridge Family, loving it all and having a ball. It's 2200 AD.
All right, try to not get a glare here. My window is the sun is shining. Why wouldn't it be on Partridge Family? 2200 AD episode, right? So I have this complete series in a couple different formats that you might enjoy seeing. And again, like I said, this doesn't, not even the right colors. And if you look at some of these characters, they kind of look like they could have been, like this could have been Elroy, I guess. David, Keith Partridge. But I don't know. There's definitely some overlap as we look at some of these clips. Like this is Reuben. Okay, so Reuben to me doesn't look like Reuben at all. In fact, it takes like the 3rd episode before they even mention Reuben's name. So I wasn't even sure that the manager was Reuben, because it looks almost like an older George Jetson, actually. As far as the voiceovers go, so Susan Day did lend her voice to a couple of episodes. But for the most part, Sherry Alberoni did her voiceover. And you can probably remember Sherry from the Mouseketeers. I remember her as Sissy's best friend on Family Affair, Sherry Alberoni. So she voiced Susan Day for the most part. Joan Gerber voiced Shirley Jones's part. And Chuck McClutchan, I believe, voiced the part of Keith. And then Danny Bonaducci, Brian Forster, and Suzanne Krauf voiced their characters.
Hey, you're looking at the new leader of the Galaxy High Senior Glee Club.
Oh, you're just beautiful in that uniform.
Yeah, I hate to admit it, but he really is. That uniform's gorgeous. Don't you think so, Danny?
It's all right.
All right. Is that all you can say?
It's pretty nice.
And so I think somebody gave these to me. So these are kind of just bootlegged copies, and this is what I watched it on. But I do have, when we're talking about when I got the VHS versions, I do have a volume 2 and 3. I don't have volume 1, or if I do, it's probably in the garage somewhere. So they had to split these up because, you know, remember these. You get these from Blockbuster. Yeah, it kind of looks a little hokey. That looks a little homemade too, doesn't it? Probably got them at a garage sale or something. These are tough to come by, but Hanna-Barbera had so many great cartoons. You know, they did such a great job with, like, you know, the Flintstones and the Jetsons, and then, you know, Scooby-Doo and Kung Fu-y. You know, Wally Gator. Oh gosh, the Wacky Races. I could just remember, like, all these, just watching all the Hanna-Barbera. The ones that I liked a lot, like and Shazam, those were great. Fantastic Four, all those great cartoons that they did. So they definitely had it in them to make something really great with this, and they ended up just rehashing the Jetsons, which was a shame. So there you go. So volume 3, they're all the same, just different color, but they couldn't fit all 16 episodes on one cassette, I guess. One of these days I'll get a VHS player, maybe. I don't know why I would. So let me show you the Goober and the Ghost Chaser. So the whole premise of this was that Goober was this weird dog, right, who used to disappear, and he was all right, you know. And then they had it very much like Scooby-Doo, right? They were the Ghost Chasers was a magazine, and so they had a couple of reporters, and then the photographer who was the dog Goober's buddy. So very much like Scooby-Doo. But then you look on the back here, and they had, you know, some great guest stars, Wilt Chamberlain. But then they said, and singing sensations, the Partridge Kids, Lori, Danny, Chris, and Tracy, voiced by actors Susan Day, Danny Bonaducci, Brian Forster, and Suzanne Krauf. Spectacular fun will haunt you in this 4-disc, 16-episode Goober and the Ghost Chaser complete series collectible. This isn't so bad. I have to tell you, I rewatched this as well, and I really liked it. And the 6 episodes the Partridge Kids are in is just great. They're just great. I love it. And you can definitely tell it's Susan Day's voice. You know, that's the thing, too, with the 2200 AD, is you can tell, you're like, hey, that's not Shirley's voice. That's not Keith. And Susan, like I said, she only did like 2 episodes, I believe. And they're not even full episodes. Like halfway through it changes to Sherry Alberoni. It's just kind of bizarre. Oh, and also Dave Madden has a couple of appearances too, but for the most part, he's not in this as well. Interesting thing, going back and talking about Partridge Family AD. I was reading a story about Shirley Jones in, I think, 2008, was on a radio show, like a retro radio show, and she had no recollection of a Partridge Family cartoon. She didn't know what the DJ was talking about. She just had no recollection of it. And I thought it was interesting because I was wondering, like, I wonder if Hanna-Barbera even approached her to be a voiceover. They probably figured out she's an Academy Award-winning actress. They probably couldn't afford her. Or, you know, maybe her agent just said no, and they never went to her with it. But yeah, she didn't even know there was a cartoon, which is bizarre, but I mean, kind of understandable. So another thing real quick is, of course, I can't show you the inside because this is sealed, and it's the only real version that I have of the complete series. And I didn't want to, sorry guys, I just couldn't break the seal. But since I do have a opened Goober and the Ghost Chasers, and they were released about the same time, I'll show you the inside. I would imagine they're pretty similar. They have the DVD. Disc 2, Disc 3. This is what Goober and the Ghost Chasers looks like. I'm imagining it's pretty similar inside. Maybe one day I'll get an unsealed version and I'll show it to you. But not today. I don't have any Cels. And the reason being is because I'm just not a Cel collector. Yeah, they're out there on eBay. I've seen them and they're pretty affordable. I mean, you can get some. if they're not signed, you can get anywhere between $20 and $30. You can get an original cell from the Partridge Family 2200 AD. If it's signed, I've seen them up to like 300 if they're signed either by a cast member or by the original artist. You know, sometimes they put those cards on the back. These are just cards. They're pictures, actually, reprints. And Danny Bonaducci and Sherry Alberoni signed a bunch of these. I just taped it on here. So these are, I mean, everywhere. I don't know if they were part of a promotion or if they were just doing a show or something and they just signed a bunch of these. It's got like a date on it, but I think this is like a reproduction of a cell, but they're pretty cool. I like them. They're on my wall. You've probably seen them a million times. The characters were all kind of the same. The only thing that was different that I just noticed rewatching is that, well, a couple of things, but one thing was that Chris and Tracy bicker through the whole series. I don't know why they made them do that, because they were best buds on the show, remember? But for some reason in the cartoon, they're always fighting. Tracy's always bossing Chris around. Chris is always complaining that, Tracy's this and that. And also Tracy's a lot taller than Chris. They made Chris very small, which again, I don't know if it was just... I don't know if it was like an Elroy crossover. And also he has brown hair. So we all know that Brian Forster had blonde hair. So I'm not sure about that.
Oh, a jet cycle.
I wish I had one. You can't. You're too young.
I'm a year older than you are.
But I'm a girl.
What does that mean?
Oh, you wouldn't understand.
The other thing that's kind of a head scratcher for me when it comes to Chris and Tracy is that you would think that because Brian Forster and Suzanne Krauf lended their vocal talents to the cartoon, that they would get beefier roles, right? That they would be more part of the storyline. But just like in the TV show, they're very minor characters. It's very odd. The only time you really see them is when they're bickering or they're complaining about each other. It's very odd. They could have, I mean, I would think they have the actors there. You'd want to like create stories around those two characters, but no. Kids can't catch a break, I guess, when it comes to these shows. So no big storylines around Chris or Tracy. The other thing that's very familiar about the Jetsons, and I caught onto it too, is that Orbit reminds me, Orbit's the dog. He's the mechanical dog that Danny, who is a tech whiz, he's also a financial wizard, but he's also a tech whiz and rebuilds things and programs things. He built Orbit, the dog. Looks a lot like Rosie. Remember Rosie on the Jetsons, the housekeeper? Yeah. The other interesting thing about Orbit, and this might be an homage to the Jetsons, is that if you remember, Orbit City was where the Jetsons lived, and Judy went to high school at Orbit City High School. So could be an homage to the Jetsons, or just that they were running out of space age words, I guess. But yeah, some interesting things. And of course they had the Hanna-Barbera laugh track, which is very annoying. The drawing of the rear seat where all the kids sat, again signed by Sherry Alberoni and Danny Bonaducci. And like I said, a lot of these were signed. And again, they're just cards, they're reproductions printed at Walmart, I guess. I will have to tell you, they might as well have called it the Danny Partridge Show, because every single episode stars Danny. It's all Danny and in Orbit, and a couple of times Keith, but for the most part, Danny. All Danny all the time. Oh, the other thing I noticed in the show is that they didn't play any Partridge Family songs. There was one episode where they did play a Partridge Family song, and now I can't remember which one it was. But they had, a songwriter probably wrote for Josie and the Pussycats or somebody like that. And they just did these little short snippets of songs on each episode, and again, not Partridge Family songs. One episode I did have a Partridge Family song, and when I get the name of it stuck in my head right now, but I'll let you know. And then the other thing too, and that they didn't move their lips when they were singing. Like Keith is singing, but he's not, his lips aren't moving.
Hanging out on Friday night with everyone, just standing on the corner trying to have some fun. Joe said there's a rumor going around, a band of gypsies camped on the edge of town. A couple of the fellas in Joe and me decided to go out and see.
It's strange. Anyway, so this is a pullout. All right, so let's take a look at an up close of the schedule on that fateful Saturday morning in September of 1974. And you'll see that the Partridge Family aired at 9:30, and the cartoons that are colored in red, those are the season premieres. And then the ones in black are the returning cartoons. And of course, the Partridge Family 2200 AD did not return. They were canceled after a half a season. They ran from September 1974 to March of 1975. And then, of course, we saw them again in 1977, like I said, in the airing in syndication as the Partridge Family in Outer Space. Now, something interesting, too, is that you'll see Jeannie at 9 o'clock. Jeannie was the animated rendition of I Dream of Jeannie. And interestingly enough, Hanna-Barbera, out of all their productions, the way I understand it is there are only two cartoons that they don't own outright. And those two are Partridge Family 2200 AD and also Jeannie. And I'm just guessing that it's because of the affiliation with the TV shows. I know Partridge Family was owned by Screen Gems and then later Sony Pictures. So they do not, Hanna-Barbera does not own Partridge Family 2200 AD or Jeannie. So very cool. Remember sitting there on Saturday mornings, legs crossed, sitting like 2 inches from the TV, watching these cartoons, the bowl of cereal. I mean, just great times. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. This came out of, I think, a comic book. It looks to me like it was a comic book. Yeah, because you have all these fun little ads. And then here's a little bit, a description of the Partridge Family. Zing into the future with the Partridge Family, all one word, in the year 2200. Rockin' and rollin' from Mars to Venus with outer space friends and out-of-sight songs. I beg to differ on the out-of-sight songs. There's like 16 or 12 seconds, 12 to 16 seconds of a song. Not a Partridge Family song for the most part. And they're not even moving their lips when they're singing. Very bizarre. So that's all I have. That's what I've got for my Partridge Family 2200 AD collection. A couple of CDs, a VHS, crossover show. Should have done that. That's what they should have done. This you've probably seen a million times. And great stuff. So how fun is it to go back and revisit Partridge Family 2200 AD? Just be thankful that I made the sacrifice and rewatched these episodes so you didn't have to. No, there are, like I said, there are some good episodes, and I remembered what song it was that they play, and it's on episode 5. Let me see which episode that was. If you want to watch it, it's called The Wax Museum, episode 5. And it was Take Good Care of Her, right off the Notebook album. But they only played a snippet of it, and why that's the only Partridge Family song they played, I don't know. It's a mystery, I guess. How great would it have been, right? If they would have redone this as like a mystery, and the Partridge Kids use that crossover from Goober and have them solving mysteries and driving around. I mean, I wouldn't even minded not having Shirley Jones and David Cassidy and Susan Day for the most part lend their voices. I think that would have been great. And hello, they already have the stories, right? Remember these? This is coming up soon. My collection of all these great mystery books. right? I just happen to have them sitting here on my desk, right? They already had the stories. They could have just redone. I mean, there was like 15 books. Put them in space. Rehash the Jetsons, brother. But yeah, so let's see if I'm remember anything else crazy about the episode. I think I touched on just about everything. If you know something about the cartoon that I didn't cover, let me know. Let us know in the comments. I know that you guys are a lot smarter than I am, but those are just like some of the things that I've read over the years, and it was like I said, one of those things that was just like, yes, we got the Partridge Family on Saturday mornings. That's great. And then you look at it and you're like, wait a minute. Even my 11-year-old self be like, not so much, right? But like I said, it's part of the Partridge Family folklore. We've got to celebrate it. We've got to look at them and watch them. And very interesting how they redid some of the characters. And of course, oh, and they added a couple of, like, one Keith's friend from Venus, or Lori's friend from Mars. They have these weird Martians and aliens, and they're very annoying. Let me just tell you, very annoying. Oh, another thing. That's what I remember. They had a couple of guest stars on the series. One that stood out to me was Mickey Dolenz. Made a couple of appearances. I know he was in that first episode, and so I thought that was interesting. I was like, wow, that voice sounds familiar. I looked, I was like, oh, it's Mickey Dolenz, the monkeys. So great. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. We got it over with. It might come back up from time to time. The 2200 AD or Partridge Family Outer Space, down the line, but got through it this time. And again, if you enjoy the show, remember to hit the thumbs up, hit the bell so that you know when a new episode drops. And, just give us a like, tell your friends and family about us, leave a comment, and stay tuned, because I know the holidays are coming up quick, and I'm shooting for 2 holiday shows, but at least 1 holiday show for sure, but I'm really shooting for 2, and I'll decorate my office and make it real holiday-ish. So stay tuned for that. And then, like I said, if you hit the bell, it'll let you know when that new episode drops. And thanks again for joining me. Make yourself happy today. Do something that makes yourself happy. Watch episode 5. Why not? If you can find it. Find it on YouTube, or, dig out some old DVDs or whatever, and watch it. Great. It might make you happy, but if not, surround yourself with your friends and family and good music and maybe good food, and enjoy yourself and enjoy life and make yourself happy. Get happy. Come on. Thanks again, guys. See you next time.